Hello, and welcome to my first video about social studies. My computer's bothering me, but today we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the German line of tanks. I'm looking at the computer screen and you can see it in my eyes while I look at the camera, but it just feels so weird. Yeah. Anyways, so the German tank tree is basically the pattern of tanks from the Panzer I, Panzer II, Panzer III, Panzer IV upward. There's a lot more than that I'm mentioning, but I'll be mentioning the Porsche line from the Panzer I up to the Panzer VII, which is the mouse. Don't quote me, please, on the Panzer VII for the mouse, because it might be the Panzer VIII, but let's see. Panzer I, II, III, IV. I think the Tiger was the Panzer V. Tiger II, Panzer VI. Mouse Panzer VII. I'm very rudimentary. Panzer mean tank, so even if I'm wrong, I'm not technically wrong, since a Panzer tank and a tank can be numbered 7. There are only 2 mouses ever built, though. So let's see. Mouse. Tank. Let's see. So the mouse tank was roughly the size of a 2-story building. I'm trying to get a nice picture of it for you. So I'm getting a guy standing next to the mouse just to show you the size. It was roughly the size of a 2-story house. It was not huge. It was the largest tank ever built. Oh, whatever. Okay, so it was the largest tank ever built. And it's the last tank on our tank line. So watch, I'll just show you a picture of it. This is a very shaky picture of the mouse. I just wanted to show you guys the mouse because I love the mouse. It's a really big tank. It was great. It was powerful. It was huge. It mostly unstoppable for the matter. Like planes kill it. Planes kill it. Planes demolish it. But how do you say? It could have survived a small bomb. To the top, I'm sure. It's so big, 200 tons, but I'm not going to get too deep into it, because I want to look at the German tank line, which is, this, we got Panzers all the way up, and anyways. Yeah. That's actually a toy version of the mouse. Now I'm interested. Because I did not think there were toy versions of the mouse. It'd be really cool to get one. I mean, like, I literally had no idea that existed to any degree, because I'm currently building a version of the mouse out of cardboard boxes. Okay. And not like a huge version, just like a version about this big, because it's like nice. I don't know. It's just doing something. Mouse had a navel gun, by the way. So, German tanks had humble beginnings. This is not World War I tanks. These are World War II tanks. It's Panzer I. Hey, I did not know the Panzer I was an actual bullet. Hey. Or a tool or something. Tell me if you know what any of these tools are. freeze frame it if you want. No, it's falling over. But anyways, so, my camera stand is rudimentary. So, basically that's what I have to say about the Panzer I. Let's go tank. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna... I got confused by so many buttons! Okay, pause this. So yeah, this is the Panzer I. It may go by different names. Some of you know by different things, like there's a bunch of controversy about the E-100 being a Russian tank design. It's a German super heavy, and the Germans called it the Super Tiger. So I don't get that. But the Panzer I was first tank, and when the generals saw it, they were impressed, because they had no idea that tanks could move fast. Old tanks. Let's see if I can get something. Old tanks were very slow. If I can find something. Won't find something to be an old tank. Can't. Oh, speaking of the mouse, I have a mouse right here. I just had to pull that one. I have a computer, but yeah. Let's see. So old tanks were big and squarular and slow. They were better than the Panzer I, and probably the Panzer II or III. These Allied tanks were decent. They were not bad, but they were slow. Because people thought that the main thing that did the damage on building was infantry. So, I'm going to get a pen here. Their idea was this. The original idea of the tanks. I'm going to draw it up here. Like World War I, they had silly drawings of a tank sometimes being like a ball. Sometimes being like... This pen is literally cutting the paper, not writing on it. Hey. Let's see. No, I'm not going to put the camera down. I'm just going to bring my drawing up. Anyways. So look, in World War I, I'm switching wars here. In World War I, why won't you write? Another failure. Another pen. More pens. So, sometimes thought of maybe a circle with multiple guns on it. See, there were some tank designs that were like this. That the idea is that it's going to roll up a hill and just roll by itself, you know, because tanks can have their tracks destroyed. But the idea was that infantrymen, so infantrymen all do as little lines. Infantrymen were these quick little things that let's see if we can actually see them. But the thing was, there were hundreds of them, so I'm just gonna put a whole bunch of dots all over the paper. Remember, all the lines and dots are infantrymen. There were hundreds of infantrymen. Now, the problem is that even though there's hundreds of infantrymen, well, their machine guns can fire hundreds of bullets per second. And the science is, let's say that a bullet is, in real life, let's say that a bullet is like this. Yes, there are some bullets that are like this. I'm a person. I cannot be, if I'm much bigger, I'm much more complex than a simple bullet. So hundreds of bullets can be made where only one human. And let's make it a little more correct. If the bullet's this big, my head was that big, then a poorly drawn human, this is an analog human. This is like the worst possible human because I drew it and I'm a terrible drawer. See that? And see the little dot next to it? That's a bullet. Hundreds of bullets. For every human, hundreds of bullets will be made. Right? So, there's no, so, even though there's lots of infantrymen, there's not a lot of, I mean, there's even more bullets. There's even more bullets that can kill hundreds of infantrymen at once, you know? Because you can just go over them like that. Especially cannon shells, because one cannon shell could send shrapnel, not to mention the explosion, the shockwave, all that stuff. So infantrymen die very quick. But they have all these weapons. They have grenades, they have guns. They can't be replaced. Except for by robots in modern day. But this is back then. This is their thought process. So they said, what if we had something large in the battlefield? And this is going to be a rather terribly drawn tank. It's like a World War I tank style, just a square. What if we had something to distract all the enemies? Look, if the enemy has equal amount of infantry as you, so I'm going to dot it all up. They only have to fire one bullet at perfect accuracy. They only have to fire one bullet to kill all your people, right? Because if you have 10 infantrymen, they have 10 infantrymen. That get rid of a arrow. You hit every time. There's no missing. You'll kill each other. If the enemy has this, and that's only one bullet for each person. Obviously, there's missing, but then add in the fact that hundreds of bullets per second, it starts to get. It's -2 + 5. I don't know. Like if 2 out of every 5 bullets missed, and a gun fired 500 bullets, you would hit the person 300 times. Or you could hit 300 people. But the idea is, what if there's a tank, some sort of object, that would distract all the enemies' fire? All the enemies would fire at the tank. Everyone would fire at the tank, right? Obviously, this is like a sacrifice idea. So, you don't want your tank to go rushing ahead of all your infantry. Because the infantry still is expendable. Because that tank is going to be expensive. Whereas the people are in war, not in real life, in war, people are more or less expendable when you have an army of like 1 million or so. And people are more or less expendable. So they have, and training hundreds of them doesn't cost much. Besides, you could replace basically a rifle with a wooden stick. Kids play shooting all the time. If you want to train someone that's just going to be a mediocre soldier, it's not going to take that much. Besides ground, dirt, mud, sand, whatever. Although the tank, on the other hand, costs a lot. The tank costs money, which means if it's there to take all the damage, if it's there if it's there like a break your fist on my face object, what happens when that doesn't happen? Because, I mean, think about it this way. If we have, I'm going to get a new piece of paper. If we have a tank that costs, say, so let's say one bullet costs 1 cent. So a bullet costs 1 cent. Obviously, I don't know about that. Maybe more, maybe less. But let's say a bullet costs 1 cent. That means 1,000 bullets would be $10. Now let's say one tank can take infinity bullets. See, one tank can take infinity bullets. But the tank costs $1,000. Then, with that same money, instead of buying one tank, you could buy 10,000 times 100. You could buy 1 million shots. 1 million bullets. And, let's assume even more, all with the assumptions today. Okay. Let's assume even more that it only takes one cannon shell to take out a tank. Now, if you melt down those bullets, each is 1 cent, to make a bullet about that big, a minor cannon shell to take out a World War I tank, right? That would take, let's say, 100 bullets to make 1 cannon shell, right? That's still only $1 for a cannon shell. This is not real life stuff. No way would a cannon shell be $1. But I'm just saying, think about that. Obviously, a tank does not cost $1,000 either. It costs way more. But I'm just dumbing this down for people. That means that your $1,000 tank is going to be taken out by a $1 big bullet. Just a big bullet. Which means it's not going to do much. But if you have a person, which say takes $2 to train. Remember, this is dumbing it down, making it cheaper. Let's say you got a person that takes $2 to train. For $1,000, you could train 500 times 2. Yeah. You could train 500 soldiers. Now, get rid of the bullets. Let's think of the cannon shells. If a cannon shell costs $1, then for 1 infantryman you can buy 2 cannon shells. And then you add in missing, and everything gets a lot more crucial there, because then it looks like, well, it looks like you never win, right? But each infantryman can carry how many bullets? How many cannon shells? Each infantryman can carry stuff with them onto the battlefield and place it in points. And let's say at each point, each area you capture is worth $100. Then you start to get paid back for what you're spending, right? So in the end, you have this idea of, okay, the tank easily gets 1,000. If it takes 1 cannon shell to take out a tank, then 1,000 cannon shells is definitely going to do it. But if you have 1 tank to absorb infinity bullets, that means it doesn't matter if they spend $1 million on bullets, because 1 million bullets are just going to bounce off your tank. So you get infinite value out of bullets, but cannon shells take your tank out. So, what if you spend only 1 tank? Because 2 tanks, that's infinity plus infinity, it's still infinity. So, what if you get 1 tank, that's $1,000. Then you train 1,000 infantrymen, which would be $2,000, if we're assuming here. Then, and your enemy... Oh, rubber band. I have a rubber band. I'm gonna shoot the camera. I think I missed. Okay. But I lost my point. But what I'm trying to say is the tank has infinite value against bullets, but not against cannon shells. Infantrymen, if a cannon shell misses 1 out of every 2 shots, which it misses a lot more, then it's all of a sudden an even match, because the cannon shell comes in, it misses once, which means your 1,000 cannon shells for $1,000 turns into 500 cannon shells for $1,000, and you get 500 infantrymen for $1,000. So it's rather even fight. And then you have the tank, which is +1 cannon shell, which means, I got something in my eye, which means that in the end, you tip the balance to 1. Okay? So that's the idea, right? But, so you want your infantry to be in front of the tank, because the infantry will absorb the first couple fire, and then the tank, and then once the cannons have fired, the tank will come through, and the infantry will already be there to provide the power. They will already be there to provide the killing force required. And the tank will be there to provide the distraction. Because then, when all the bullets are being fired at the tank, the cannon shells will be reloading. The cannons will be reloading. So yeah. It's like paper, rock, scissors. It's like paper, rock, scissors. Infantry beats cannon. Cannon beats tank. Tank beats infantry. Which is perfect for stalemate, slow battle. But the Germans did something interesting. They made a fast tank, the Panzer I. The Panzer I went in front of the infantry. Because it was faster than the infantry. Which means now, the cannons don't miss 1 out of every 2 shots. They miss 2 out of every 3 shots. Or 4 out of every 5 shots. And that means that the odds are now become in favor of the tank, because instead of building a tank that can take up infinite shots, you also made a tank that can take up 5 artillery shells. Which means, if you cut 5 in half, that's sort of 2.5. So, that means you save 2.5 lives of infantry. And then arm infantry with radio to planes, because now there's planes. There are planes in World War I. I'm just saying more connected. Radio planes, that means every infantryman now has a sort of flying agent. Yes, this was a lot more expensive. But was it really? So, you're making a tank. And like I said, it's $1,000. So I'm going to build your tank here. So I'm building your tank. So you have your tank here. It's built like this. It has very bad tracks. Notice I didn't even draw tracks. I really just draw wheels. It could be like wheel bogies. You have armor, say, that thick, and a turret that thick. Let's say that's the $1,000 tank. It may be able to tank infinite bullets, but it only takes 1 cannon shell to take it out. Which by World War II, there are hundreds of cannons. So what you could either do, oh, well then, I need it to stop the cannon shell. So, then you make it with thicker armor. And you make it heavier. And now it's big and heavy. Now I can't draw it. Now it's big and heavy, and now that's the armor. It has thicker armor. The entire front half is the armor. And now your thing costs, let's just make it $4,000, since the armor went from that thick to that thick. So $4,000. Now is infinite bullets. Okay. And let's say it gets the same ratio as the Panzer did. So that's 4 out of every 5 shots. So take 5 shots to take this out. It's $4,000 for 5 shots. Whereas you could just make the original tank quicker. Which is not that hard, since my computer's turning off. Since appliances get cheaper, all of a sudden this engine turns into this engine. Why would someone ever want to buy the old engine? So they drop it, and they don't make the new engine super expensive. They just make the new engine the same, sort of. I guess it would go up, but that's $2,000 for 4 out of 5 shots. That's still half the price of the big tank. And it moves quick. And then guess what you have? This big tank doesn't have the same tracks as a small tank. Because it has to bear all that extra weight. Now, simple question. That still has the gun of the older one. That still has the tiny little gun. So what happens when this tank meets another tank? They battle it out, nothing happens, it takes an artillery to destroy it. Or one tank gets around the other and just shoots it in the back. Or infantry come and just wipe these out because it is now so slow they can just go around it and put a tiny little bomb in the back and blow it up. Now, that's interesting. That's fast. So infantrymen aren't going to be able to catch up to that. The Panzer I. Whereas the heavy tank, they can and get behind it and then destroy it. And not to mention the Panzer IV, let's make it $2,000 now. Let's not just make it faster with a new engine. Let's give it new suspension too. New suspension. So let's make the Panzer IV, which has its gun, but it has the new suspension of that tank. It has the suspension of that tank, the armor of that tank, but it has speed. So now it has better suspension and it has speed. So you know what that means? That means that, well, this tank is already at its max load and you would need to build a completely new tank to get a bigger gun. The Panzer I can get a bigger gun because it has that good suspension. So all of a sudden, now, got a tank with a much bigger gun, and it can destroy the big one. And this is where you get the Panzer II, which I want to get a good picture of it. That's Panzer III, no, 9. Here we got some Panzer IIs. Model Panzer IIs, these are toys. But as you can see, they have a bigger gun. And yet they still move fast. And then, look at this. People start to realize this. So then, my mouse is not working because it's on this cord. Unplug that. Then you get Panzer III. Panzer III, now look at the big gun. They have a big gun, and they improve the armor till you finally get to the, Panzer IV. Which, now this is a $4,000 tank, but it's fast, it has armor, and because it has the suspension, so let's upgrade our model a bit. So, see this tank? This tank's now updated, because the Allies made a new tank. A tank with half as much armor, but it's slanted, so it's the same armor as the other one. And they make it with a bigger gun. No. The cord is in the way of everything. And they make it with a bigger gun. And they make it with even new suspension. Great suspensions. Suspension so good they can hold up the heavy weight and a big gun. You may think, oh hey, that's great. But guess what? Then guess what the Germans can do? With that new suspension, they can build this tank. Note that this is not an accurate drawing. It's like the worst drawing possible. So, now with that great suspension, now they can build this. A tank with it has more armor. Double the armor of the old tank, which means it takes 3 shots to kill hitting it. But it moves fast, which means that 3 shots plus the 4. I'm going to say 4 because it was 5. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how many cannon shots it takes. Not to mention, now, Panzer IV, I'm going to try and find one. With the 10. I don't have any good pictures. 10 centimeter. Okay, searching. So, I don't have any great pictures. Okay, well, I don't have a good picture. But the Panzer IV had a 10 centimeter gun. Keep in mind, the Tiger tank, one of the most feared tanks of World War II, had a 80 centimeter. No, wait, not 80. 80 centimeter. It had a 8.8 to 88 millimeter, which means an 8.8 centimeter gun. The Panzer IV had a 10 centimeter gun. Huge. And decent armor, which meant it took 7 shots, which is more than this one, which can take 5 shots. And as a big gun, this can take 7 shots, and has a bigger gun because of the good suspension. Now, that's all and well and great until you get to the Soviet side of things. So, the Soviets had the T-34 and T-35. Now, these tanks did not have no ordinary slanted armor, so they had extremely slanted armor, and a rounded turret, and a decent gun, which is cool. So I'm drawing a terribly drawn Soviet tank right now.